The unreliable juror. Jurors are a major component of jury trials. Essentially, it is a juror's responsibility to recall, memorize, and make judgments based upon evidence presented in a courtroom, as well as sworn testimony. However, does a juror have the ability to uphold their opinions against the inherent pressures that come with group settings? This topic is of great importance, more specifically to criminal cases, where more than likely someone is facing hard time. How can it be assumed that a decision that is carried down from jurors is based upon the facts of the case and not peer pressure from other jurors? Therefore, I will also discuss ways in which conformity enters the judicial system through jurors, thus making the essence of the jury process counterproductive, hence relying on the unreliable juror. In New York State, criminal cases must unanimously be agreed on by jurors. Until recently, states had a choice of whether or not they used unanimous jury verdicts. However, on April 20th, 2020, the United States Supreme Court ruled all states must have unanimous verdicts in serious criminal trials. The jury process is to assure that hearings are unbiased as well as fair. Juries for non-civil cases consist of 6 to 12 people. When jurors are summoned, they receive an orientation that explains their responsibilities as a juror. Prior to receiving their preliminary instructions, they are also required to take an oath in which they plead to be fair, impartial, and follow the guidelines of the law. Actual jury deliberations take place after the final arguments are made in the courtroom. The judge gives jurors instruction on the process of deliberation, and then they are ushered off to a private room. This process of deliberation over a case could take hours or even weeks. There is no set time. However, typically it usually takes up to 5 to 10 days. As a group, the jurors review evidence, testimony, and arguments. A verdict of innocence or guilt must unanimously be agreed to. However, there are times when jurors cannot come to an agreement. This results in what is called a hung jury. This could lead to a mistrial, and a new trial can start, or the prosecutor can choose not to retry the case. Conformity is the most prevalent type of social influence. It is the propensity to change one's attitude or belief to integrate within a group. This social influence impacts jurors as they may disregard crucial evidence in an effort to gain group acceptance. Findings in social psychology have indicated that it is common of groups to conform to the dominant opinion or a socially desirable position. There are two types of social influences that lead to conformity: informational influence and normative influence. Informational influence refers to any additional information exchanged within a group that has the capacity to change a person's attitude, belief, or behavior. For instance, it is not uncommon for a juror to hear unfamiliar terms such as complex legal phrases or how to properly interpret presented information. As a result, they will heavily rely on other group members for their understanding instead of developing their own. Therefore, there is potential for a juror to cast a vote of guilt or innocence without fully understanding critical aspects of a case. Normative influence refers to how people alter their opinion, belief, and/or behavior in an effort to be accepted by others. Perhaps they feel bullied by other dominant jurors. Thus, similar to informational influence, crucial information can be disregarded to gain the acceptance of a group, including a juror who conforms to other opinions. In fact, a Tennessee juror in the death penalty case of Gail Owens in 2010 admitted to not having all of the mitigating facts that were crucial to the defendant's character. Unfortunately, although I had doubts when we were in deliberation, I was not able to stand up to the bullies on the jury, quoted the juror. In addition, as there is no set time for jury deliberations, time can be a factor in coming to a quick verdict in trials. In the United States versus Lakhani, a juror admitted that his initial decision of not guilty was changed to guilty when he was told by a group member that his vote of not guilty would cause the case to be extended for a lengthier time period. Therefore, the juror changed their vote to guilty. The juror was quoted as saying, "I said the man is not guilty, and there ain't nobody gonna change my mind." The juror's explanation was simply, "He don't mean nothing to me. The man is guilty." Conformity can lead to groupthink, group polarization, and high group cohesion. Conformity can hinder the essence of the jury process, as jurors should give their own opinions based on evidence and not conform. Group polarization occurs when members of a group with similar interests and/or ideas engage in a decision, and afterwards the group then develops a stronger opinion than what was originally expressed. Therefore, as jurors engage in decisions over a topic, additional points are introduced and/or previous ones are reiterated. After the discussion, jurors will present a more intensified viewpoint than previously expressed. This change in behavior can impact the outcome of a case. Group polarization can lead to groupthink. As group polarization potentially intensifies jurors' original point of view, individualistic thinking is omitted in groupthink. The more time jurors spend together in isolation increases the potential for a juror to ascribe to the narrative of the group rather than express their individual opinion. Therefore, the dominant opinion of the group is adapted, and personal beliefs and/or opinions are self-contained in an effort to avoid any possible ridicule from the group. Groupthink compromises jury deliberations, as it alienates individual thought and/or discussions that could be crucial to a case. Groupthink results in poor decision-making and overrides logic. Crucial aspects of a case potentially could be admonished as individual thought is alienated due to fear of backlash. High group cohesion can be misleading and not always positively correlated to groups. In fact, it can be harmful as it does not automatically equate to better group performance and could potentially lead to groupthink. Group members have strong social bonds and share commonalities in how they identify with themselves. They also tend to be resistant to change and are reluctant to go against group norms. Any information, opinion, or belief that conflicts with viewpoints of a group are not considered. Therefore, high group cohesion amongst jurors prevents the consideration of the actual facts of a case. Classic social psychology studies such as the Hawthorne effect, the Stanford Prison Experiment, and the behavioral study of obedience experiment have demonstrated the impact of these social influences. The Hawthorne effect indicated that when people are aware that they're being observed, there is a tendency for that individual to change to mimic what they perceive to be more desirable behavior. Therefore, as people naturally want to appease their counterparts, an individual may alter their behavior to match the behaviors of others. The Stanford Prison Experiment demonstrated how situational factors have the ability to shift one's behavior into the extreme of irrationality. It also inhibited individualistic thinking. The findings also indicated that when someone is greatly immersed within a group, they begin to fully identify with that group, altering their behavior. Therefore, all of the participants of the experiment conceded with the dehumanizing practices. No one intervened against the maltreatment. This, in turn, resulted in the loss of control over the experiment. The behavioral study of obedience experiment, the participants fully cooperated in administering painful shocks despite the visible signs of distress and pain from its participants. Their unwillingness to disobey authority overrode their physical symptoms of anxiety as they began to twitch and have tension within 20 minutes of administering the shocks. Even as the shocks intensified, they remained obedient. The pressure of conforming is even greater when an individual does not have any supporters or camaraderie within a group. The potential for an individual to alter their opinion or belief in an effort to fit into the group becomes greater. Therefore, research indicates that jurors will vote in accordance with a group despite their personal opinion, and especially when they do not have any supporters. Friendships, whether long distance or close, impact conformity. For instance, close friendships amongst jurors actually lessens the possibility of an individual conforming. However, distant friendships increases the likelihood of a person conforming. The Wright, D. and Hall findings indicated that when mock jurors received additional brief instruction prior to deliberating, it clarified complex and confusing interpretations of legal phrases. Thus, it increased confusion amongst the mock jurors. Relatively simple and brief instruction affected people's belief in guilt, their reasonable doubt threshold, and the way in which they justify their verdicts. Based upon the findings, I propose that jurors participate in a brief mandatory webinar that is in addition to jury orientation. The webinar would explain complex and/or confusing legal phrases in layman's terms, such as reasonable doubt. Therefore, the explaining of complex legal terms would no longer be left at the discretion nor to the interpretation of the judge, who initially explains these terms during the jurors' deliberations. The webinar would also address group social influences that plague jurists more frequently, such as time, groupthink, as well as the importance of individualistic thinking. Time pressure is a source of stress that will have the effect of inducing a policy-making group to become more cohesive and more likely to engage in groupthink. The webinar will feature a digital clock with a 10-year countdown. This, in turn, will help a juror to realize how time on the jury can affect someone's life. Another intervention method is to have two mediators present in the deliberation process. Their role would be to simply guide the process, alleviating the potential for any one opinion or belief to have dominance over the group of jurors. The mediators would also encourage the jurors to consider all of the possible alternatives of the case. Therefore, the role of the foreman would be deduced to the task of only presenting the verdict to the judge. This concept was based off of Irving Janis's groupthink model. After reviewing the Challenger incident, Janis indicated that the tragedy could have been avoided if there was inclusion of outside experts, in the decision-making process, all members taking the role of devil's advocate and critically appraising all alternative courses of action. Conclusion: more than 367 wrongfully convicted people have been exonerated through the Innocence Project. Though DNA has helped overturn these cases, it remains the responsibility of jurors to review the evidence of a case. It should also be noted that more than half of the exonerated cases involved an in-courtroom misidentification. The lives of people rest heavily on a system that is over 200 years old. Therefore, as jurors are a major component of the judicial system, change should begin at the jurors' level. The Supreme Court has already reiterated that everyone has a right to a trial by an impartial jury. The preventative measures proposed will help prevent jurors from conforming, and as a result, innocent people will not be wrongfully convicted of a crime.